Hi everyone, I've just started the webinar, so I will give people an opportunity to join us before we start. Hello and welcome to our May webinar, which is focusing on performance management and, more importantly, how we can drive those best behaviours, those good behaviours in our managers and our leadership population, which I know is an issue for our HR colleagues and HR audience. For those who don't know me, I'm Emma O'Connor. I'm an employment lawyer here in the employment team at Boys Turner, and I'm really pleased to be joined today by Chris Ryan of CR Systems. Hi, Chris, welcome.
Hello, Emma. Lovely to be here.
Thank you very much. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. We are live. Thank you so much to those of you who have filled out the poll that I sent out just before the webinar, a bit of your pre-webinar homework. So thank you very much for that. And we'll be looking at the results of that as we talk, as I talk to Chris during our webinar today. But again, get in touch, put things in the chat and the Q&A. It'd be really great to hear your views about all things performance management and in particular 360-degree reviews. For those who don't know Boys Turner, we are a full-service commercial law firm based here in the Thames Valley, but we look after clients across the UK, Europe, and globally. In the employment team, we support clients with their HR day-to-day queries, litigation, policies and contracts, and my key area, which is training. We also have a business immigration team as well, who can help with all things visa and sponsorship licenses. We are live. You will receive a recording of this presentation, but as always, this is a general overview. So if you've got any particular queries or questions, then do get in touch with Chris or myself, and I'll be giving you details of how you can do that a bit later on. If you are not linked in with me, why the devil aren't you? Where would we be without a QR code? If you would like to link in with me to hear about what we're doing in the employment team, hear about cases, updates, legislation, etc., then click on the QR code and that will magically take you to my LinkedIn page where we can connect and be friends. So if you've not done that already, then please do so. I look forward to you joining my LinkedIn group. Just to flag as well, I've had a fantastic response to this year's HR Masterclass. Really excited about it, really excited about the people who I've got who are coming. But if you've not booked, you do have a chance. We are just shy of a month to go. It is an in-person course. It's a day. It's a really nice course. It's aimed and written for HR. So it's basically me giving you best practice, legal tips, techniques, of what I would like to see if I could create my perfect HR process and my perfect HR professional. So what are those kind of behaviours? What are those skills that you need? And how can you support your managers when you're thinking about disciplinary issues, performance management, obviously touching on that a bit today, but also looking at things around family-friendly policies and what that might look like, looking at some of the April changes. So it really is a great course. I've been running it since 2017. So if you would like to join me and join my other delegates to learn best practice, to learn from each other, share advice, etc., then please do book on 26th of June. It's in our offices in Reading. There are booking discounts available. So if you want to book direct or book through me, then please do get in touch. And then training more generally, I'm doing lots of training, lots of manager training, focus again on those sort of key areas that managers get involved in. So manager masterclass, essential manager course. So again, really popular. So if you want to hear more about that, then get in touch. As well as that, doing lots of training on redundancies, collective redundancy, individual redundancy, not just for managers and HR, but also for staff representative bodies as well. Again, a key part of that collective process, and also on the changes to flexible working. So if you want to get in touch and find out more about our training, be it manager, HR, wider employee populations, virtual, in-person, bite-size or e-learning courses, then please do get in touch. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to be talking about how we can create and drive forward those best behaviours within our leadership and management teams. What I'm going to do there is I'm going to stop sharing and really sort of, bring Chris into the conversation about really why is it, I mean, I tend to see things from that other side of the fence. So I will deal with performance management issues when unfortunately things have maybe not gone as well as expected. And what tends to happen, what I tend to see is that behaviours have been allowed to continue. So, for example, behaviours have been allowed to continue for a number of years. They've not been picked up through performance management. They haven't been picked up either through appraisal systems. And then we're kind of left at a bit of a stalemate where we've got an employee who's not demonstrating those behaviours, who is really looking at performance management processes and potentially exiting the business, however that might look. So let's kind of, step back in time and really look at how we can, be proactive in managing performance and obviously driving forward those best behaviours. And Chris, for you, why should we be managing best behaviours and creating those sort of role modelling behaviours in our leaders?
I think there's a very simple answer to that one, and it's about bottom line. I mean, we're talking about being in a corporate environment. There's a classic old saying about you get hired for what you are and fired for who you are. And very often we focus too much on professional skills rather than how they are implemented within a business. So my big thing on behavior is to actually understand what behavior means within a business. We use this word best behavior. I think there are two types of behavior within a business, what I would call very crudely hygiene behaviors, the behaviors that we would expect in a civil society, people being pleasant to each other, people taking the time out, people being nice, people being fair, whatever that means under a spectrum. And those are important, but they just make us nice people. They don't necessarily drive profit and performance, okay? Then there are the other behaviors that are important behaviors and are different for different businesses, quite simply because if a business has a strategy of being a high-risk business, then we would expect behaviors to be high-risk behaviors. Conservative behaviors in a high-risk business aren't as encouraged and do not contribute to the bottom line as much as they are in a low-risk business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think people's behaviours obviously change at different points, be that commercial cycle. So, Q end, year end, they may change for business reasons, they may change for personal reasons. And, I think, behavior is a whole kind of melting pot of different, as you said, commercial behaviors, being nice, being kind, all of those good behaviors that we want, those empathetic behaviors that we want in our leaders as well. But why is it though that organizations don't deal with poor behavior? Is there something you can point to from the organizations that you've worked with?
I think that first of all, the bit you said about behavior changes every day.
Yeah.
We are human beings, so we're never consistent in what we do. What we try to aim for is some kind of relative consistency. The issues about behaviors is that behaviors are actually, I love that old iceberg thing that we've all seen, with the behavior as the tip of the iceberg, which is that tiny bit there. Then underneath this mass of issues about values, needs, experiences, confidence, worries, all that kind of thing, they change, they are massive, and our behavior is affected by those changes. So one of the main reasons from my experience that companies don't attack behaviors is A, because it's difficult, B, it is difficult to measure. It's not an easy thing to measure, and they don't define specifically what behaviors are best for their business. And another reason is it is an emotional issue. It's a very personal issue, attacking somebody about behaviours, because you are attacking the individual. You're not attacking the process and what they do. So it becomes very personal very quickly.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's very hard, isn't it, to say what does good look like? And how do you judge? And I think you do judge people differently and what the expectations are. I also think, yeah, I mean, often the performance management cases are those, in the olden days, those huge, massive, files that would be, propping open a door or holding up a desk, because it does sit in that just too difficult pile, and one would hope that either the individual just kind of leaves on their own accord, or you just sort of leave them in the corner and don't poke them. And I agree with you. I think that it does sort of bring up just too many issues for people that they just don't want, and we don't like confrontation. It's not something that we naturally seek out, either in our personal life or more importantly in our professional life. And I think sometimes you just think that if you say things enough times, people will just get it, but sometimes they don't. So I suppose when they don't get it, what are some of the options that may be available without
I think so.
go down sort of a formal capability or whatever procedure?
But once you've got down to the disciplinary level, it's normally too late. Is the issue? Sorry, is one issue. The first thing, just sort of recalling back to the beginning, is the first step is to understand what best behavior means in your business. Okay, and obviously there's the issue about separating how nice we want to be in our business. Where are we from the collegiate model to the command model in terms of what we expect from people in our business? But then most importantly, understanding the drivers that make a difference to the bottom line, as I said before. And that springs in general from the competency framework. And competency frameworks are normally very often very fluffy, very, very value-based. We will be the greatest leaders in our industry. We will be fair and equitable to all our customers. Okay. A lot of companies don't take the time to go to the next chunk down, to actually split out and say, well, what are the behavioral indicators that we need to excel at, that pardon me, that actually will make a difference and will actually define what we mean by leadership, what we mean by communication, what we mean by good management in our company. Okay, so the first step is actually to define it and understand it, and then the next step obviously is to measure it, and understand where people believe people are. I mean, behavior is extrinsic. I think its posh term is the modified external manifestation of internal knowledge, skills, beliefs, values, needs, etc. Okay, so having got it to a position where we really easy, having created a competency framework that says this is what we mean, we then need to go out and measure it. And the only horse in town really for measuring behavior in a business is 360 feedback. It's because only other people receive our behaviors, only other people understand what our behaviors mean to them. 360 feedback has a good rep and a bad rep. Statistically, it isn't the most valid of models, so it really only holds up for face validation more than anything else. That is, it says it measures behavior. That means you've got to put behaviors into it. One of the issues with 360 feedback is very often the quality of the competency model inside the 360 feedback is weak, to say the least, and be polite. And there is a mishmash of behaviors, skills, and other issues trying to be forced into a 360, which isn't really appropriate.
I wonder, you saying about, with the competency framework, and it'd be interesting to sort of hear what our listeners sort of think about this as well, if they've been involved in putting together a competency framework. When you say that it only kind of gets to that top level, so, we want to be, it's where it sort of changes from being a mission statement, we want to be the best ever, to then drilling down. And I wonder why there perhaps is a reticence to sort of go to that that next level?
There is a reticence, but also there's what I call a hierarchical opinion issue as well, in that it does take some technical skill to convert a mission, nothing wrong with it, but a mission-based or value-based competency framework into a real hard-bitten framework that actually addresses the behaviors within the business. So it takes time and effort to do it. And also, when I say an opinion hierarchy, everybody has a view on what a behavior is and what it should look like in a business. So very often in businesses, we come across competency frameworks that have been designed with good intent and then thwarted by senior people within the business, forcing their opinion on what should be within it. So being able to take an independent view of a competency framework is useful. We have a free, sorry, this is a plug, but we have a free little piece of software on our website where people can load their competency frameworks in, and it will give an independent view on how fit for purpose that competency framework is. So that's a starter for 10, to have an independent view of it, to make sure it's right. And then there's all kinds of other things that are, around good survey procedures in terms of making it short, making it understandable, and thinking of the poor people that have to fill the thing in.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And we'll share that. We'll obviously share your website so people can go on there and have a look at that that competency framework tool. I think it's one of those things that it does, maybe that also fits in the sort of the too difficult pile of trying to sort of drill down into what those behaviors are. And I'm just wondering if you've got any kind of tips for maybe kind of what does look like, best behaviors for a business.
In terms of what looks like best behaviors, first of all, they are relatively few that actually make a difference to the business. So don't sweat the small stuff would be the first thing I would say. In terms of what are best behaviors, as I say, that we can go for the general hygiene model. So deciding, what is nice and what is good. And I'm repeating myself a bit there. But as I say, the big difference is in what makes a difference to our business. What kind of behaviors do we employ that actually make a difference to the way people perform? Bad behavior within a business most probably has more effect not on the person themselves, but on the people around them. So sorting out bad behavior early on is, it's an imperative, but often overlooked. One of the reasons why you asked why it's not used as much as it should be is that it is very personal. People are going to get personal feedback about the way that they behave, and then they've got to be in a position to actually be in a position emotionally to understand it, take it on board, and say, yes, I will develop and improve those things. One of the biggest issues normally with introducing any kind of measurement of behavior into a business is this personal point. And one way of overcoming that is, rather than discuss individuals in the first place, discuss a group. So ask for feedback on a team, or ask a feedback on the board rather than an individual. And then, having got that feedback, then allow people to be more comfortable to actually take the personal, because what happens is our appetites get whetted. But once we see this is what people think of our team, every one of us tends to think, well, we're the best driver on the team. So we want to show that we're the best driver in the house. So yeah, let me have a go at this. Okay. And another thing too is, once you've decided that you want to actually measure what best behaviors are, then you've got to decide what you want to improve. And the classic British thing is to actually just look at the 2 or 3 worst things and say, we're going to improve those. Yeah. And actually need to be a little bit more clever than that. Because the 2 or 3 worst things, will improve, definitely, but they might take you from okay to slightly better than okay. The things that will make a difference to you and your business are those behaviors that align with the strategy, more importantly, and therefore make a bigger difference for the pound you spend on them than the ones taking you from not very good to okay. The ones that's taking you from good to great are the great ones. Easy to say, not so easy to implement, but at least don't always go for that easy comfort thing of going for the 3 or 4 lowest scoring things.
I don't know, do you think, I mean, a lot of times, we often just go for the low-hanging fruit. I mean, do you think it's a bit of a balance? So, pick off the things that you can deal with quickly, and then, focus on those initiatives which are going to make the biggest change. Do you think it's a bit of a balance? Because I suppose
It's
what
really
I'm
fun.
thinking is that it's very difficult. So sometimes, I think sometimes with any kind of objective or project, it's sometimes, we try and do too much. We try and, take on the world and have too many plates spinning. And yet actually maybe just trying to kind of balance between, let's get a few easy wins, brilliant, and it's good for morale and engagement and productivity. And I don't know, is there a balance to be looked at, to be struck?
Of course, there's a balance. It's funny you talk about low-hanging fruit. I was with a professional services company just yesterday, running through an engagement survey with them, and obviously that's about behaviours as well. And we were talking about this low light, this low-hanging fruit issue. And yes, there are some things that you can do that, but if you're taking the low-lying fruit, make sure it has the biggest impact. Okay. Because it's very rare the low-lying fruit will have big value. And with behavioral stuff, I would say that's even more the case. Changing behaviors isn't easy. We haven't spoken about how to change behaviors yet, or tips for changing behavior. It isn't easy. And therefore, if you're going to do it, don't waste it on things that aren't going to make a lot of difference. So with 360 feedback, you would normally really, in terms of your own remit, have time or the commitment to develop 1, 2, absolute maximum 3 behaviors over any time period. So it's tempting to say, oh yeah, this is the lowest, there we can change it. But actually, the work to change the lowest scoring behaviors is no more or less than it is to change the highest scoring behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work, and it's not easy either way. So you might as well take the time to put a bit of intellectual horsepower into thinking where you'll actually get your best bang for your buck.
No, I like that idea. Do you want to do the results of the survey, or do you want to leave that to the end? I was just going to do a quick poll, but we can do that now,
Uh,
or do you want to talk about the
in,
result?
well, if the nice thing was that loads of people have responded back. Thank you. But in terms of what people really want us to cover today, more than anything, it would seem that advice and tips on how to promote and encourage best behavior, that we can do, having understood what best behavior is. How to change mindsets, that's
Yeah,
huge. That's
yeah. Okay.
absolutely huge. Okay. I can give some top line tips and ideas in changing mindsets. The single biggest one is about culture. Okay. So if you're changing behavior, look at the culture at the top. Yeah. Because that's the culture that should be so closely aligned to your competency frameworks. And culture starts and stops at the top, in terms of things like corporate governance. We've had Greenbury, Cadbury, Turnbull, Hicks, several major investigations into corporate governance over the years. The biggest thing that comes up time and again is that culture trumps systems. So no matter what systems and processes you put in place, the culture will actually trump any systems that are there. And actually behavior trumps culture. Behavior is driven by culture. So getting behavior right at the very top and concentrating on behavior at the top will actually lead to the differences and changes down the line.
Yeah.
When you have individual issues with specific behavioral problems, okay, then by teasing them out with 360, at least then you've got a platform to address them early on and giving people an opportunity to change with their own volition, seeing the issue they have, rather than spend the time and money and energy going through the disciplinary route. And by the way, we're talking about behavior as if it's bad. The vast majority of people are good at what they do and are good as human beings. We shouldn't concentrate on the negatives too much,
It's the
So
80-20 rule, isn't it? 80-20. You know, you spend 80% of your time celebrating the good behavior, you know, and celebrating those role modeling behaviors, bringing everybody up to that standard, you know, rather than focusing on the negatives. I think you're absolutely right.
And just to add to that, you know, if 80% of what we do is good, and we should take the time out just to remember that. Number two, as I say, don't sweat the small stuff that isn't great. Don't worry about small imperfections in behavior, you know, if they don't align. Worry about taking the stuff that's good to be absolutely great. And then if there are lines that are not being reached, yeah, and you have a system that measures behavior naturally within a business, then if the processes that support the development of those behaviors are in place, you'll find over time, I'm not saying straight away, but over time, you will have much less issue with bad behavior and therefore disciplinary related behavior over time. It should work its way out, though I'm not promising it's a quick or easy issue.
So before we touch on changing mindsets, let's spend a little bit of time talking about 360-degree reviews. And I'm just going to launch a quick poll. Let's do that now. If you could answer that, that would be great. Just about your experiences, and hopefully that's all come. I can see people are responding to that. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much. So I think the majority there, hopefully you can all see that as well, is the majority, so 56% say that they use it some of the time, and 41% say they haven't used it at all. So actually, you know, a good kind of, you know, some and not so much. So Chris, in a nutshell, what is 360-degree reviews? When do you use it? How do you use it?
Okay. So 360 reviews basically give you information as to how well your competency framework is being implemented from a behavioral point of view. 360 only measures behavior, as I mentioned before, and pardon me, and how often we should use it. If we understand that 360 is a development tool, it is not a performance management tool. There is a correlation between behavior and performance, but it is a weak correlation. Therefore, if we concentrate on what we can in terms of behavior, the performance will follow. Therefore, it's like anything else. Once a year, amongst those people that make a difference in the company in terms of how their behavior affects others. So basically, we're talking the management cadre all the way down, occasionally using it with hypos, in high potential people is also very useful too. How often we should use it? Once a year, because it has quite an impact on an organization. The organizational footprint, the organizational time to complete a 360 is quite high. There are ways to mitigate that. And then once a 360 has been developed, being completed, there must be processes in place for people to be able to select what it is they're going to develop, be allowed the time to develop, and then to have that development measured as well, which maybe is another issue, because the last thing you want to do is run another 360. And there are ways around that we may or may not have time to discuss today.
Yeah. And actually be quite interesting as well. Pop in the chat as well. What has been your experiences of using 360-degree, particularly those people who have used it a lot, but also some of those people who've used it, haven't used it at all. And also, if you've not used it, I'm just wondering, is there a particular reason as to why? Quite happy just doing the kind of the yearly appraisal. So pop that in, and I'll feed the comments through. So we do that. I think that's a really important point you made. It is not for everybody. It is really for those, as you said, the decision makers, the people who can kind of make the change within the organization. I like that idea as well as using it for our key employees, so our top talent, those with high potential. I like that, and I can see the benefit of doing that as well. So that's really helpful. So what do we do? We use our 360-degree, and what do we do with the results of that?
The standard process is to then obviously share the results with the individual. There are one of two ways of doing it. The cheap and quick way is to discuss it with your manager. which is also in many ways the most expensive way, because you have to be sure that the manager is the kind of person that can have a decent conversation with the individual. The other way is to have someone from HR or someone who is trained in coaching, or an independent third party to come in and discuss with the individual, because it needs to be in a safe environment for the individual to have a good conversation, a fair conversation, an honest conversation about their personal issues. And that takes a lot of bravery and a lot of understanding for people so you've got to make the environment as comfortable as you can for it to pursue. Then from the 360 itself, you, as I say, you would choose really no more than 2 or 3 specific items which to develop, and to get the best out of it, as I say, think of the good to greats. You would then go through a process where you would agree not just what, but how. So if we are going to change somebody's communication skills or specifically their feedback skills, for example, one of the things that we know about behavior is behavior doesn't change by reading a book or having a video or getting more knowledge about something. Behavior changes with consistency. You have to do things, and you have to do things frequently. So we change habits. And it's habits that make behavioral change more than anything else, more than knowledge, more than skills. There's there's some research just published a couple of months ago from Penn University, which allegedly is the biggest piece of research into behavioral change and the causes of behavioral change that's ever been taken place. I mean, take that with a pinch of salt. But the thing that came out loud and clear, which is nice because you've always kind of known it, is that changing behavior is not about giving somebody a bit more knowledge or some more skills. It's actually about habits, about changing habits that are ingrained because they come from within. So when we change mindsets, it's unlikely we're ever going to change mindsets because that's deep within us, but we can change the code that changes the behavior of somebody within it. So if you think of that iceberg, we're not going to change what's underneath because we can't really get there, but we can chip away at the top to change it into something that we like the look of, or that I would like the look of, that's required for our business. Culture. Is that a decent metaphor? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. I think it's a really good metaphor actually of the iceberg. So when we use 360-degree reviews, I'm thinking that it's important to obviously plan what we're going to do, think about who we're going to review using 360-degree review. But I also think it's probably as important to think about who we're going to get to answer the 360-degree review, who's going to give their feedback. Have you got any sort of tips for that?
Yeah, so that two or three modes of doing this. The number is important, okay, but don't use number for quality. So people have got to have known the person for, we say, an average of at least 6 months, and work closely enough with them to have an informed opinion, not an uninformed opinion. So those are the baselines. And what you will find that normally within a business is that is relatively few people. So what you then have to decide is who is going to decide who those people should be. Personally, I'm a big fan of allowing the person who is getting the feedback to choose the individual themselves. That there is criticism, and it has some base, in fact, that people who choose only people they like and trust, will get better feedback than people that they don't like and trust. That isn't actually completely true. However, what is completely true is if I am allowed to choose the people who I get feedback from, I am much more liable to actually sit down and take notice of that feedback, even when it is uncomfortable. And that's what you want. And again, I want to come back to, most of the time, there is very little uncomfortable about it. Most 360 feedback is about pleasant surprises rather than unpleasant surprises.
That question, isn't it? Or that statement about, never ask the question that you're not sure what the answer is going to be. The classic cross-examination technique. Don't ask a question of a witness that you're not sure what their answer is going to be. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a really good point actually about asking the person who is being reviewed to, give an input into who they want to be asked. I think that's really good. And I'd never thought of that before. I thought it was a very sort of formulaic that you'll just ask people in your team, or, ask everybody in your immediate team, from whether that's, a PA up until another kind of, somebody on the same, level as you. So that's interesting. So when we do the 360 feedback, I mean, is this sort of part of an ongoing process? I do find sometimes it's like, deep breath, it's May, it's review time, let's just get through it, get to the 31st, and then we can just forget it until May 2025. Is there a sense of that, or do you feel that doing 360 kind of encourages a more kind of long-term and sustainable approach to changing behaviours?
It depends entirely on the company that's using it and how they use it. I've got to say I'm a little bit biased about 360 feedback, so maybe I don't come to it totally unprejudiced. 360 feedback can make a huge difference to an individual and a huge difference to the team and the people around them. And therefore, it should, in my opinion, again, a biased opinion, it should be an integrated part of any development framework, and it sits firmly under development. So the first thing to do is to get people to understand it is about personal development and not about performance. And there are several ways of doing that. So first of all, some companies force people to share their 360 feedback with their manager. Don't at first, make it completely obligatory, completely optional. And then the other thing too is this thing I mentioned at the beginning, is don't make it personal at first. If you're early on with it, or if you think you've got problems with it, make it a third party. So make it a team thing. So get 360 feedback on the team, get 360 feedback on the board. That will give you valuable feedback, okay? But it will lead to people being comfortable with getting that kind of feedback, and then lead on to 360s. And of course, the lovely thing about that, it's cheap too. You can do one 360 instead of 20 or 30.
So how do we bring people with us? How do we change the mindset that, undertaking a review, whether that's 360-degree reviews or another sort of form of review, how can we show that there is value to doing that? What experiences do you have, or what can you share about, changing mindsets and bringing people obviously with you on that journey?
I think just coming back to changing mindsets, it's rare we change mindsets. We do and can change behaviors. We might nudge mindsets a little bit, but we can make significant differences to behaviors, because allowing people to view what impact their behaviors have. In terms of, sorry, I'm just going to have my gin and tonic. In terms of how we get people to move along, by making it either individually, I mentioned teams, by making it a team effort, by making it the issues around the team and what we can do as a team. That's obviously one way of a soft launch of changing behaviors, because we're looking at behaviors overall. When we come down to individuals, what we can talk about, you ask about personal experience, okay? One of the things that we find that is an issue is actually, from an HR point of view, standing up in front of your boss and saying, yes, we've invested in 360 and feedback and we've got this return from it, okay? And the only way really to show you've got a return from the 360 is by measuring the change in behavior. And then it gets a bit complicated because you've got to make sure you're using the same cats that you used for the original 360, rather than cats and dogs that you might have for the second 360, and you've got to keep it very focused. There are ways of doing that. We most probably don't have time to discuss those today, but it's all around keeping the feedback within a short time period that's relevant to the change that has been invested in actually the development. Ensure that the person who is changing the development communicates that they're trying to change, so people can see the difference. and also keeping it very, very tight. So you might have 40 or 50 behavioral indicators in a normal competency framework. If you're going to do it properly to measure the change, the person who is being measured should only be measured on those 2 or 3 things that they have actually committed to develop. And that makes a big difference to the numbers. So now able to stand and put your hand on your heart and say, Mr. Boss or Mrs. Boss, we have improved by this, and we have real evidence to the effect here.
Yeah. I've got one comment just to sort of follow up on that, and then I've got a question for you as well. So I think on the other side of the fence, so talking about, we've talked about the person who is being assessed. I think sometimes from kind of a team perspective or a wider employee or subordinate perspective, often you might feel that, we fill out these surveys, nothing ever happens, nothing changes, et cetera, et cetera. I think one thing that, that managers or whoever is being assessed on 360 can do is actually be open about it with their teams as well and say, look, we are going through this process. We do as a business take it seriously. We do value your input. And so thank you for filling out that feedback. I know it takes time, but, we do value your honesty. We do value your transparency. And, we are working and we are using, those, using that feedback for the better good of us as a leadership population. Because I think sometimes you just feel that you fill out these forms and where does it go? It just gets lost in the kind of the ether. So I think thanking people for filling it in would be a really good way to kind of get the rest of the firm or the rest of the business kind of engaged in your appraisal process. And
I think there are some, just
yeah.
on the back of that, I think there are a couple of, we were talking tips and advice earlier on. There is a natural reticence, I completely understand it, to share your 360 upwards. But actually, if you share your 360 downwards, that has a lot of really, really positive implications to it. First of all, it's about saying, look, I've sat and I've listened, and this is what I believe you have said, okay? And this is what I'm going to do about it. And that advertises that 360 works, advertises that people's feedback has been seen and accepted. It also protects the individual as much as they want to be protected from the content of the 360 itself. So if you can share downwards, and I think you should share downwards, because that's where the biggest effect normally is held, that can have a very positive effect.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so, a lot of issues that I see stem from things like communication. So, communication isn't working. We don't feel our manager communicates with us, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have something that perhaps comes up in your 360 that says, I appreciate that, there are some issues with communication. This is what I'm going to work on. Let's kind of get feedback. I think it makes you more authentic as a leader. It shows that you listen. Again, one of those core behaviors that we want to encourage in our leadership population. So I think, again, it's about having that honesty. And I think your colleagues, your teams, will respect you more for it, and we'll see that you are willing to change and you are willing to listen and take feedback on board. So I completely agree with you. I think, sharing upwards, as well as, not sharing obviously the nitty-gritty, but maybe sharing some of those key areas with your teams or whoever has kind of assessed you would be an important thing to do as well. You've mentioned about the 360-degree review is about behavior, it's not about performance. Why do you think then that so many businesses link appraisals, reviews to salary?
We don't start with the easy ones, do we?
Well, I just it's very interesting, because if you say it's not about it, but a lot of businesses will use appraisals and use reviews to benchmark against salaries. Why do you think that is?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because currently, depending how they do it. So if they separate performance reviews from appraisal, i.e. development reviews, that's probably the most efficient way of doing it. So performance reviews should be around hard-nosed, what you did, how you did it, and where it measured in terms of the objectives and stuff. Yeah. And the appraisal reviews are about you as a human being and what we can do to develop you. Very often the two get conflated. into one separate area. Well, one way of doing it, most people hate hearing this, is separate the time of the year by 6 months that you run appraisal reviews and performance reviews. Go on for several days on this one, So I think that's just my highlight, and I'm sure some people will disagree with what I've just said.
No, I just think it's interesting that, a lot of the time it is, what you got in an appraisal rating will be linked to, linked to salary, promotion, etc. And I think you're right. I think sometimes, behaviours are linked to promotion. Do we think this person has the attributes that we want to be a leader? And I think there is a link. I think there is a disconnect sometimes between we promote people who are good at their job and who aren't necessarily good at being a people leader. Similarly, it can be the other way around. You could be a brilliant people leader, but absolutely have no technical ability whatsoever. There's obviously a spectrum of how to get from.
And actually, there's some real evidence of that. Back in the early 2000s, Vodafone spent literally millions on 360 feedback, and actually directly aligned the results of 360 feedback alone, with pay. So that was one of your pay criteria. That was one of your performance criteria. And they spent 3 years, no, maybe more, maybe 4 or 5 years, but certainly at least 3 years integrating it into pay before they realized actually all they were doing was paying people to be nicer and not necessarily have any particular effect on the business.
So in the few minutes that we've got left, Chris, what would be your tips? How can we drive those best behaviours?
Number one, understand them and what they mean for your business. Number two, measure them at a group level and at an individual level. Number three, put the development in place so that people have the opportunity to develop without fear of reprisal in any way. So it's personal and it's up to me. Put the support mechanisms in place. Pardon me. And I think finally, and above all, be kind in the process.
And I think, I would add to that, it is about culture. Do you have an open culture and a transparent culture when people, can disagree, but in a safe way, psychologically, there's psychological safety within an organization. And I think it is important that organizations have different people with different ideas and different voices and diversity of thought and opinion. I do think it makes for a healthy a healthy population, not just in our leaderships, but in general, questioning and challenging as well as supporting. And I think, reviews and the way that we embrace reviews is a big part of that. But it does all go back to, about our leaders and them, demonstrating those role modeling behaviors, not just talking about values, but also, living them as well, and being able to bring people along with them, with their teams. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you too, as well, for everybody who got involved with the polls and with the questions beforehand. It has really helped, and it's really, really nice to kind of get people, joining in on these sessions as well. We will be sending out the recording link as well, so you can listen again and share with your teams. And I really do hope that you've taken away some really good tips and hints for how you can, drive those best behaviours and model those best behaviours in your leadership populations. Thank you, Chris. Brilliant. Thank you for joining me today. Great to have you.
Thank you, Emma. It's been fun.
And I hope everybody has enjoyed the session, and I look forward to seeing you again next month. Don't forget, as ever, to like and share our webinars. Again, join us at future webinars, as well as booking onto our courses such as the HR Masterclass. So enjoy your rest of your day. Thank you very much. Thanks again. Bye-bye.